The moment my sister threw boiling water on me at our wedding, everything changed in an instant. I stood there frozen, the searing pain shooting through my arm, the hot liquid burning my skin like a cruel brand. Gasps and screams erupted around the room as my white dress was instantly stained with a steaming wetness that smelled sharp and painful. My heart pounded and I struggled to keep my composure as my guests looked on in disbelief. But the most shocking reaction was not from my sister or the crowd, it was my husband. Instead of rushing to my side or defending me, he laughed. A cold, cruel laugh that sliced through the chaos like a knife. I felt the sting of betrayal more than the water itself. How could the man I trusted find amusement in my humiliation and pain? In that moment, all my dreams of a perfect day shattered like glass. But I was not going to let this moment define me. Quietly, I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. The room fell silent as I pressed play on the video I had been secretly recording throughout the day. Every cruel smirk, every whispered insult, every hateful glance my sister had cast was now captured for all to see. The footage played on the big screen, exposing her actions and intentions to everyone present. Shock rippled through the crowd. Some faces turned red with shame, others with anger. The smugness drained from my sister's face as her actions were laid bare in undeniable proof. For the first time, the family I had once thought I could trust had to confront the truth. This was not a misunderstanding or an accident. It was a calculated act of cruelty, and I was finally standing up for myself. The whispers began. Questions flew. Who was really the victim? Who was the villain? The atmosphere shifted. The wedding that was supposed to be a celebration of love and unity had become a battleground. But for me, it was the moment I took back my power. The moment I told my story on my terms. The moment I refused to be a victim any longer. The boiling water burned my skin, but it could not burn away my dignity. And as the video continued to play, I knew my fight had only just begun. The day had started with so much hope and excitement. Our wedding venue was a beautiful garden bathed in golden sunlight filled with blooming flowers and the soft hum of laughter. Family and friends gathered dressed in their finest, ready to celebrate what was meant to be the happiest day of my life. I had dreamed of this moment for years, imagining the smiles, the vows, and the feeling of finally starting my own family with the man I loved. My sister's presence, though always a bit tense, didn't seem to cast a shadow at first. We had shared polite smiles in the morning, but beneath that I sensed a storm brewing. My family was large and complicated with many unspoken resentments and old wounds that often simmered just below the surface. My parents had their favorites, and my sister Alyssa always seemed to feel she was overlooked and undervalued. She had a way of making subtle digs and cold remarks wrapped in the guise of concern or humor that left me feeling small and questioning myself. My husband David had been my rock through all of it, or so I thought. He had stood by me through countless family dramas and reassured me that on this day, everything would be different. But even he seemed uneasy avoiding eye contact with certain relatives and making strange comments that I brushed off as nerves. The ceremony went smoothly, a perfect blend of joy and solemnity. Julia, my best friend, stood beside me beaming with happiness. For a moment, it felt like the tensions of the past were forgotten, replaced by the bright light of new beginnings. Yet, as the reception began, Alyssa arrived late. Not just late, but dressed in a way that made it clear she wanted to steal attention. She wore a white dress nearly as elaborate as mine, her presence commanding the room in a way that made many guests whisper and glance nervously. It was a silent declaration that this day was not solely mine that she refused to fade into the background. I forced a smile and tried to keep the atmosphere light, engaging with our guests and sharing laughs with David. But inside, the weight of the impending storm settled heavier with every passing minute. My sister's cold stares and clipped words were sharp reminders that the peace was fragile, that the day could unravel in an instant. Looking around, I realized that some family members had already picked sides, their loyalties uncertain, their smiles forced. The air was thick with anticipation and unspoken grievances. I clung to hope that the night would pass without incident, that love and celebration would win out over bitterness and old wounds. but deep down I knew that this was just the calm before the inevitable storm. Alyssa was never just my sister. She was a storm wrapped in a smile, a force that could tear apart everything I held dear. Growing up, her presence was always overpowering her moods, swinging like a pendulum between charm and cruelty. She had a way of making everyone around her feel uneasy, yet she wielded her influence like a weapon. Our childhood was marked by constant battles for attention and approval, especially from our parents, who seemed to favor her unpredictable brilliance despite the chaos it brought. As we grew older, her jealousy toward me only deepened. She resented my successes, my happiness, and the life I was building away from the toxic family dynamics. Her words were sharp, often disguised as teasing, but laced with venom. "You think you're better than us?" she'd sneer, or "You're just playing house while the real world burns." Behind closed doors, the attacks grew more intense. There were threats, sabotaged plans, and calculated attempts to isolate me from the family circle. Her controlling nature extended beyond me. She manipulated my parents with sob stories and guilt trips, painting herself as the victim while casting me as the cold, ungrateful one. Despite warnings from friends and even some relatives, my parents consistently excused her behavior, blaming stress or past trauma, refusing to see the damage she inflicted. The boiling water incident at the wedding wasn't out of nowhere. It was the culmination of years of simmering resentment and unchecked rage. Alyssa had always had a dangerous streak, but this act of violence was the most blatant and cruel. It was her way of reclaiming control, making a statement that she could destroy what I had worked so hard to build. What made it even more painful was knowing she had been plotting this for weeks, fueled by bitterness and a need to humiliate me publicly. She thrived on chaos and conflict, using family divisions as fuel for her fire. This wasn't just a personal attack. It was a carefully orchestrated spectacle designed to shame me and disrupt the harmony I sought. Her manipulations had alienated many family members, but enough remained loyal to her to complicate the fallout. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, she had made veiled threats, thrown subtle barbs during family gatherings, and spread rumors that undermined my relationship with David. Yet despite all the warning signs, I held on to hope that love and forgiveness might prevail, that the day could still be mine. But deep inside, I knew Alyssa's storm was coming, and I was about to be caught in its path. When the boiling water splashed onto me, the pain was immediate and overwhelming, but what hurt even more was the shock and disbelief radiating from everyone around me. I gasped instinctively, pulling my arm away, feeling the scorching heat sear through my skin. Guests erupted into screams and frantic whispers. The once joyful reception transformed into chaos. But amid the noise and confusion, my husband David's reaction was like a dagger twisting in my heart. Instead of rushing to help or condemning my sister, he laughed a cold, harsh laugh that sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't believe my eyes. The man I trusted to protect me was amused by my suffering. That moment shattered every illusion I had about our relationship. I felt utterly betrayed and alone in that crowded room. My sister's smirk widened as if she had won the battle, basking in the attention and the pain she had caused. My mother, ever the peacemaker, immediately rushed toward Alyssa, pulling her aside and whispering hurried excuses about how she didn't mean it. But the words rang hollow. Some family members stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene or look away. Others whispered accusations and took sides, their loyalties becoming painfully clear. I could see the subtle glances and heard the murmurs questioning who was truly at fault. Despite the physical pain, I forced myself to remain composed. I remembered the video footage stored on my phone evidence I had quietly captured throughout the day, just in case something went wrong. My mind raced, and I knew I couldn't let this moment pass without standing up for myself. So while trembling and burning, I excused myself, retreating to a quiet corner to gather my strength. I dialed the video, and with steady hands, I returned to the center of the room, pressing play for everyone to see. The room fell silent as the screen revealed my sister's deliberate hostility, the hateful words she had uttered behind my back, and the cruel smirk she wore just before the attack. The truth was undeniable. The guests' reactions shifted from confusion to shock to outrage. Some gasped loudly, others shook their heads in disbelief. My sister's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. The power in that moment shifted decisively. I felt a surge of empowerment despite the burning pain. Even though the physical injury was severe, exposing her duplicity to everyone present was the victory I needed. Still, the wounds went beyond the surface. The betrayal of my husband cut the deepest. My trust was fractured, and questions about our future swirled in my mind. Yet amid all this turmoil, one thing was certain: I would not be silenced or defeated. I would face this storm head-on with courage and the truth as my shield. Following the shocking incident, the atmosphere at the wedding reception became charged with unease and tension. The initial chaos settled into a simmering conflict that was impossible to ignore. Guests who had come expecting celebration now found themselves caught in the middle of a deeply personal family war. Conversations hushed quickly when my sister entered the room, her eyes blazing with anger and defiance. Despite the glaring evidence on the screen, she refused to back down or show any remorse. Instead, she unleashed a barrage of accusations, attempting to rewrite the narrative and paint herself as the victim of a misunderstanding. My mother, torn between protecting her daughter and maintaining family harmony, intervened with strained pleas for calm and forgiveness. Her words felt hollow, as if she were trying to cover up the cracks in the family facade, rather than truly addressing the hurt caused. Meanwhile, David's continued detachment from the situation only deepened my sense of isolation. His laughter earlier still echoed in my mind, and though he tried to act normal in front of others, I caught fleeting moments of discomfort and guilt. Yet he said nothing to defend me or condemn my sister's actions, leaving me to wonder where his loyalties truly lay. The division among the family was palpable. Some relatives sided openly with my sister, dismissing the severity of her actions and urging me to forgive for the sake of peace. Others quietly offered support, expressing sympathy and outrage at the attack. The fault lines that had long existed within the family now split wide open, forcing everyone to pick sides. Outside the immediate circle, rumors began to spread rapidly. Friends and distant relatives who were not present at the wedding heard fragmented versions of the event, often skewed or exaggerated, fueling gossip and speculation. The burden of managing the fallout became mine alone. I found myself defending my character repeatedly, explaining the truth over and over to those who doubted or disbelieved. Despite the growing pressure, I refused to retreat. Instead, I started to dig deeper into the roots of the conflict. I learned more about the ways my sister had manipulated family members over the years, using charm and deception to control narratives and avoid accountability. It became clear that the boiling water attack was a calculated escalation intended to destroy not just my dress, but my reputation and standing within the family. At the same time, I grappled with the emotional toll of the betrayal by David. Trust once broken is difficult to repair, and I struggled to reconcile the man I loved with the person who laughed at my suffering. The tension mounted as I realized that this crisis was not just about one violent act, but a long history of control, resentment, and unresolved pain. The wedding meant to be a joyous beginning had become the battleground where these buried conflicts exploded. I knew I had to find a way to reclaim my power and redefine the terms of my relationships. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and confrontations, but I was determined to face it, fueled by a growing resolve to stand up for myself and demand justice no matter the cost. As the tension simmered and the guests struggled to process the events of the day, I knew that I could not remain passive any longer. The pain from the boiling water was still fresh, but the emotional wounds cut even deeper. In a moment that would define the rest of my life, I made the decision to take a stand that was bold and irreversible. I stood up from my seat, the burn on my arm throbbing painfully, and walked to the center of the room. All eyes turned to me, anticipation and uncertainty filling the air. Without hesitation, I addressed the crowd, my voice steady but charged with emotion. I exposed the truth behind my sister's actions, recounting the years of manipulation, control, and emotional abuse that had led to this violent outburst. The video continued to play on the screen behind me, each frame reinforcing my words and revealing the reality that some had tried to deny. The room fell into a stunned silence as the weight of the revelation sank in. My sister's smugness evaporated, replaced by a mixture of rage, embarrassment, and desperation. She tried to interrupt, to deny, to shift blame, but the room no longer listened. The power dynamics had shifted irrevocably. Then came an unexpected moment that shattered what little stability remained. My husband David, who until then had maintained an uncomfortable silence, stood up and spoke. His voice was cold, but his words carried the undeniable truth of his complicity. He admitted to having known about my sister's plans, even facilitating some of the lies that had been spread about me. The shock rippled through the room like an electric current. Gasps, whispers, and incredulous stares followed his confession. It was the ultimate betrayal. The man I had vowed to trust and love had not only laughed at my pain, but had been part of the scheme to undermine me. Tears welled in my eyes, but I held my head high, refusing to break. Instead, I used the moment to show strength and clarity. I declared that their actions would no longer dictate my life, that I was reclaiming my story and my dignity. The guests, many of whom had been silent witnesses to years of family dysfunction, now began to rally around me. Applause broke out, tentative at first, but growing louder as the reality of the situation crystallized. Some family members averted their eyes, unable to face the truth, while others approached me quietly, offering words of support and solidarity. The night that had begun in joy had transformed into a powerful turning point, not just for me, but for everyone who had been caught in the toxic web of lies and control. As the reception ended, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The path ahead would be difficult, but in that moment, I knew I had taken the first decisive step toward freedom and justice. In the days following the wedding, the fallout was immediate and intense. The once tightly knit family now found itself fractured beyond repair, with clear lines drawn between those who stood with me and those who sided with my sister. Social media became a battleground where rumors, half-truths, and outright lies spread like wildfire. My sister and mother launched a campaign to discredit me, painting me as the villain who had orchestrated a public spectacle to shame the family. Messages flooded my phone, some filled with support and encouragement, others dripping with hostility and betrayal. Family gatherings that once felt warm and familiar turned cold and tense. Relatives who had been close suddenly avoided me, while others openly criticized my decision to expose the truth. The emotional toll was heavy, yet I found unexpected strength in the solidarity of friends and distant relatives who saw through the manipulation. Meanwhile, the division within the family grew sharper. Some members attempted to mediate, urging forgiveness and peace, but their words often rang hollow against the backdrop of so much pain and anger. My mother's denial was particularly difficult to bear. She refused to acknowledge the extent of my sister's actions, insisting that it was all a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Her refusal to take responsibility deepened the wounds and made reconciliation impossible. Despite the backlash, I refused to be silenced. I began to share my story more openly using social media platforms and speaking engagements to raise awareness about family violence and the importance of standing up against abuse. The support from strangers, survivors, and advocates became a source of healing and empowerment. It was clear that my story resonated far beyond my immediate circle, touching a nerve in a society that often ignores the silent struggles within families. Yet the pressure from my family did not relent. Phone calls turned into confrontations, text messages into ultimatums. Some relatives accused me of betraying family loyalty, others threatened to cut ties entirely. The sense of isolation was profound, but so was my resolve. I knew that true loyalty could not exist without honesty and respect. As I navigated this new reality, I realized that I was no longer just fighting for myself, but for anyone trapped in a similar cycle of abuse and control. The reactions around me became a mirror reflecting the complexity of family dynamics, love entwined with pain, loyalty challenged by betrayal, and the courage required to break free. Through it all, I held on to the belief that healing was possible and that my voice could make a difference. This turbulent chapter was not the end, but a beginning, a chance to rebuild, redefine, and reclaim my life on my own terms. Realizing that words alone would not suffice to heal the wounds or bring justice, I knew I had to take concrete steps to protect myself and reclaim my life. The emotional scars ran deep, but the physical evidence, the burns from the boiling water, were a stark reminder that this was not just family drama. This was abuse. I sought legal counsel to understand my options, determined to ensure that my sister and anyone complicit would be held accountable. The decision to pursue legal action was not easy. It meant exposing my family's darkest secrets to the world, risking further division, and stepping into an uncertain future. But I could no longer stay silent or be a victim to their manipulation. With the help of my attorney, I filed a restraining order against my sister to prevent any further contact or harm. This legal shield was a crucial step in creating a safe space where I could begin to heal. Simultaneously, I gathered every piece of evidence I had collected, the video footage, witness statements from guests, medical reports detailing my injuries to build a solid case. I knew that truth backed by proof was my strongest weapon. To further empower myself, I connected with support groups for survivors of family violence, finding solace and strength in shared experiences. These communities offered more than just empathy. They provided resources and advice for navigating the emotional and legal complexities ahead. Beyond the courtroom, I made a public statement through social media, carefully crafting a message that was honest but measured, calling attention to the realities of family abuse without vilifying every family member. The response was overwhelming. Messages of support poured in from strangers who had faced similar struggles, many thanking me for breaking the silence and encouraging others to do the same. Meanwhile, the repercussions within my family intensified. My mother, enraged and ashamed, lashed out with accusations of betrayal and disloyalty, attempting to rally other relatives against me. My sister responded with anger and denial, disputing the claims and accusing me of fabricating the story for attention. Yet their efforts to discredit me only strengthened my resolve. I refused to be intimidated or silenced. My husband's position also shifted. The earlier laughter and complicity gave way to regret and attempts at reconciliation, but the damage was done. Trust once broken is hard to rebuild, and I set clear boundaries to protect my emotional well-being. Through it all, I focused on rebuilding my life both physically and emotionally. Therapy helped me process the trauma, while close friends and allies provided unwavering support. I learned to recognize and assert my boundaries, reclaiming my autonomy piece by piece. Taking decisive legal and personal action was not just about punishment. It was about creating a future where I could live without fear, with dignity and peace. This chapter marked a turning point in my journey from victim to survivor, from silence to voice, and from pain to empowerment. After initiating legal proceedings and publicly sharing my story, the consequences rippled far beyond what I had initially anticipated. My family, particularly my sister and mother, escalated their efforts to discredit and isolate me. Phone calls became confrontational, messages grew threatening, and social media was flooded with false narratives aimed at tarnishing my reputation. They painted me as the instigator, accusing me of fabricating the entire incident to seek attention and disrupt the family. Despite these attacks, I remained steadfast, refusing to engage in retaliatory hostility or allow their intimidation tactics to silence me. The legal system became both a battleground and a refuge. Court dates brought waves of anxiety, but also a sense of purpose. I presented my evidence with the support of my lawyer, medical professionals, and witnesses who corroborated my experience. The gravity of the situation was no longer a secret, and the law began to hold those responsible accountable. Yet the emotional toll was undeniable. David's role in the entire ordeal complicated matters deeply. His prior complicity and subsequent attempts to mend fences created a tumultuous environment. I wrestled with feelings of betrayal and love caught between healing and heartbreak. Ultimately, I realized that for my own well-being, I needed to establish clear boundaries with him, which meant redefining our relationship on my terms. Friends and allies rallied around me, providing a network of support that was critical in navigating the storm. They helped buffer the relentless pressure from family and offered encouragement when my strength waned. I also became more vocal in advocacy, participating in awareness campaigns and supporting others facing similar family violence. Meanwhile, the family fracture deepened. Some relatives severed ties, entirely unwilling to condone the violence and subsequent denial. Others remained loyal to my sister, causing painful estrangements that underscored how deep and complex family loyalties could be. Financially and emotionally, the ordeal was draining, but it solidified my resolve. I began to focus on rebuilding my life with intentionality and self-care. Every small victory in court, every word of support from strangers who resonated with my story, was a reminder that I was not alone. This chapter was one of resilience amidst adversity, proving that even when surrounded by betrayal and hostility, the pursuit of truth and justice could prevail. It marked a new beginning, one defined not by the cruelty I endured, but by the courage with which I faced it and the strength I found within myself to move forward. Emerging from the chaos of betrayal and abuse, I found within myself a reservoir of strength I had never fully known. The physical scars from the boiling water were healing, but it was the emotional and psychological fortitude that truly defined my recovery. I refused to be a silent victim any longer. Instead, I chose to become a voice for those silenced by family violence and manipulation. I began sharing my story openly through interviews, social media, and support groups, hoping to shed light on the often hidden dynamics of toxic family relationships. Standing before audiences and speaking candidly about my experience was both daunting and liberating. Each time I recounted my journey, I felt my resolve strengthen and my sense of purpose deepened. I became a symbol of resilience, not just for myself, but for countless others facing similar struggles. My advocacy extended beyond words. I actively engaged with organizations dedicated to supporting victims of domestic and family abuse. I participated in workshops, fundraisers, and awareness campaigns determined to use my experience to effect change. This public role gave me a renewed sense of identity, shifting from victim to survivor to empowered advocate. At the same time, I set firm boundaries within my personal life. I limited contact with family members who continued to perpetuate toxicity, focusing instead on building a circle of support composed of friends, allies, and professionals who valued and respected me. My relationship with David evolved as well. Though the betrayal had cut deep, I sought healing and clarity, demanding honesty and accountability. Where reconciliation was impossible, I found the courage to walk away prioritizing my well-being above all else. Through therapy and self-reflection, I learned to recognize signs of manipulation and control, equipping myself to prevent similar harm in the future. My journey was not linear. Setbacks and moments of doubt were inevitable. However, the knowledge that I had reclaimed my narrative and stood firm against adversity gave me a foundation of confidence and hope. I became a beacon for others, proving that healing and empowerment are possible even after the darkest trials. The transformation was profound. What once was a story of pain became a testament to human resilience, courage, and the power of truth. And though the scars remain, they serve as reminders not of defeat, but of survival and strength. The culmination of months of legal battles, emotional confrontations, and public scrutiny brought undeniable consequences for my sister and mother, marking a significant turning point in this painful journey. The court ruled firmly in my favor, issuing restraining orders that legally prohibited my sister from contacting or approaching me. This legal protection was a necessary boundary that I had fought hard to establish, ensuring my safety and peace of mind. Furthermore, my sister faced criminal charges related to the assault, and the ensuing trial exposed her manipulative patterns and violent tendencies to the public. The court's decision not only held her accountable, but sent a powerful message about the seriousness of family violence and the consequences of unchecked abuse. My mother, having enabled and defended my sister's actions for years, was forced to confront her complicity. The community's awareness and growing support for my case led to social repercussions that isolated them from much of the family and mutual friends. The once tightly woven family fabric was now irrevocably torn. My husband David's involvement became a public topic as well, with many questioning the dynamics that allowed such betrayal within a marriage. Although difficult, these revelations spurred honest conversations about trust, accountability, and the necessity of boundaries in relationships. Amidst this upheaval, I focused on rebuilding my life with intentionality. I moved into a new home, surrounded by a supportive network of friends and advocates. Financial independence became a priority, and I pursued new opportunities that aligned with my values and desire for autonomy. The personal growth I experienced during this time was profound. I developed a clearer understanding of healthy relationships and self respect, learning to identify and avoid toxic dynamics. The emotional scars from the betrayal and violence remained, but they were tempered by the knowledge that I had stood up for myself and prevailed. My story began to inspire others facing similar challenges as I was invited to speak at events, contribute to publications, and mentor survivors. The journey had transformed me from a victim into a leader and advocate for change. Though the family I once knew was lost, I found a chosen family in the community of survivors and allies who uplifted one another. This turning point was more than legal victory. It was a reclamation of my identity and dignity. The clarity of outcomes, legal accountability, social consequences, and personal empowerment offered a sense of closure and hope for the future. It was proof that standing up against abuse is not only possible, but necessary, and that justice, though sometimes slow, is attainable. The pain of the past would always be a part of me, but it no longer defined my story. Instead, I chose to write new chapters filled with strength, healing, and resilience. Reflecting on the journey from that devastating day at my wedding to where I stand now, I realize how much strength and courage it took to reclaim my life and my voice. Family violence and control can isolate you, make you doubt your worth, and trap you in silence, but I learned that breaking free is possible. My experience is a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of standing up for yourself, and the necessity of seeking support when faced with abuse. To anyone enduring similar struggles, know that you are not alone and there is hope beyond the pain. Healing is a journey sometimes difficult and winding, but it leads to freedom, dignity, and peace. It is essential to recognize that love should never come at the cost of your safety or self-respect. Setting boundaries, seeking justice, and prioritizing your well-being are acts of bravery, not betrayal. My story is not just about the pain I endured, but about the triumph of reclaiming my identity and choosing a future defined by empowerment rather than fear. I urge those watching to listen to their inner voice, to trust themselves, and to find the courage to break the cycles of abuse and manipulation. Support is available from friends, professionals, and communities that understand and care. No one deserves to suffer in silence. This is not just my story. It is a call to action for anyone trapped in toxic relationships. The path to healing may be hard, but every step forward is a victory. Remember, you are worthy of respect, love, and happiness. Let my journey inspire you to stand tall, speak out, and embrace the strength within. The road ahead is yours to define, and it can be filled with hope, renewal, and joy. Thank you for listening, for believing, and for joining me in shining a light on the realities many endure but few speak of. Together, we can create a world where no one has to face such pain alone.